A billionaire came home early one evening, expecting silence like always, but instead, he heard his triplets laughing for the first time since their mother died. When he followed the sound and opened the sunroom door, what he saw his maid doing with his boys numbed him for a while. He froze on the spot, unable to believe the scene in front of him. Michael Reed pushed open the front door of his big house in Stamford, Connecticut, and the first thing that hit him was exhaustion. His head felt heavy after a long day in New York City. Meetings had failed, arguments had filled the boardroom, and investors had walked out with cold faces. He had carried stress on his shoulders since morning, and by evening he was drained in a way that scared him. All he wanted was silence, the kind of silence that had lived in his home for the last 8 months. His wife, Anna, had died in a terrible car accident while buying medicine for their triplets. Since that night, silence had become a permanent visitor in his home. His sons, Ryan, Noah, and Caleb, once loud and full of life, now stayed quiet. They barely spoke, barely smiled, and never laughed. At first, Michael believed time would help them heal, but nothing changed. Days passed, weeks passed, and then months passed. The house stayed empty, even when all 4 of them were inside it. So when Michael stepped inside that day, loosening his tie and rubbing the bridge of his nose, he expected the same emptiness he came home to every night. He expected stillness, he expected pain, but he did not get silence. He heard something he had not heard in 8 long months: laughter. Not just one voice, but 3 small voices laughing together. It echoed through the hallway like a sound from another lifetime. Michael stopped moving. His briefcase slipped from his hand and fell on the floor. He did not even look down. He just listened. Laughter, real laughter, filled the house. He could hardly breathe. For a moment, he wondered if stress was playing with his mind. Maybe he was imagining it. Maybe it was coming from the television. Maybe it was a memory. But it was not a memory. It was real, and it was coming from the sunroom, the room Anna had loved the most. Michael slowly walked toward the sound with a confused heartbeat. His legs felt weak, and his chest felt tight. His mind raced with questions. How could his sons laugh? Why now? Who made them laugh? When he reached the sunroom door, he pushed it open just a little and peeped inside. What he saw made his breath stop in his throat. His 3 sons were on someone's back. They were holding on with small hands, smiling with bright faces that he had not seen in months. The woman on her hands and knees was moving slowly across the room, making funny sounds, tossing her head like she was pretending to be a horse. That woman was Sarah, the new maid that Anna's mother, Linda, had hired a month earlier. Ryan was holding her shoulders. Noah had a small rope around her neck like a pretend rein. Caleb was sitting at the back, laughing so hard he could barely stay balanced. Sarah laughed with them, her face warm and full of life, as if she wanted nothing more in the world than to bring joy to 3 sad little boys. Michael stood there without moving. His mind felt slow, like he could not understand what he was seeing. His sons had not laughed since the night they lost their mother. They had cried until their small bodies shook. They had curled up in corners, hiding their pain from him. They woke up screaming most nights, calling for Anna, begging for her to come back. After some time, they stopped crying altogether. They stopped trying. Their silence had become heavier than their grief. But now, here they were, laughing like children again, laughing like the world was not broken, laughing like they had just found a piece of their mother in that room. And it was not happening because of him. It was happening because of Sarah. Sarah Morrison, a quiet young woman with gentle eyes and a soft voice. She had been in his house for a month, keeping things clean, taking care of small tasks, helping the boys with meals, helping them with baths, keeping their rooms neat. She had never forced herself into their lives. She had only moved slowly, kindly, and carefully. And now here she was, bringing life back into his home. Sarah noticed him at the door. Her smile froze, the laughter in the room softened. The boys turned and saw him standing there. Their eyes went wide, almost afraid. They slowly slid off her back and pressed themselves against her side, like she was a shield, like she was safety. Sarah stayed on her knees, breathing hard, trying to read Michael's face. She looked frightened, like she believed she had done something wrong, like she was expecting him to shout at her. Michael tried to speak, but nothing came out. His throat felt tight. His eyes burned. He looked at his sons, with their small, hopeful faces, then looked at Sarah, who had given them something he had not been able to give in months. Finally, he managed a small nod. His voice refused to come out, so he turned around and walked out of the room quickly, before the tears reached his eyes. He went straight to his office and sat in the dark. His chest ached. He was thankful, ashamed, relieved, and confused all at once. He had tried everything: books, therapists, toys, schedules. Nothing worked, and yet this one woman had walked into his home, and somehow she broke the wall around his sons' hearts. He sat there in silence for a long time, thinking of what he had just seen, thinking of the joy that had filled that room, thinking of Sarah's laughter mixing with his son's laughter. For a moment, the house had felt alive again, almost like before, almost like when Anna was still around. Michael lifted his head slowly in the dark room, and a small thought came to him, a thought he had not allowed himself to feel in months. Maybe God sent Sarah for a reason. Michael barely slept that night. He sat in his office with the lights off, staring at the wall, thinking of the laughter he heard in the sunroom. It replayed in his mind again and again, the soft sound of Ryan giggling, the loud laugh from Noah, the small happy squeal from Caleb. He had forgotten what those sounds felt like. He had forgotten that his house could hold joy. Each time the memory returned, his heart tightened with confusion, and something warm he did not know how to handle. He closed his eyes and saw Sarah again, her hands on the floor, her head turning like a playful horse, her laughter mixing with the boys. He did not understand how she did it. He had done everything he could think of to help his sons, but he could not reach them. Yet Sarah, a young woman he barely knew, had done in one afternoon what he could not do in months. When morning came, Michael stood up slowly from the office couch. His back hurt from sleeping in a bad position, but his mind was awake. He wanted to see Sarah, even though he did not know what he would say. He wanted to see the boys too, just to make sure last night was real and not something his tired mind created. When he reached the kitchen, he found her there. Sarah stood at the counter, cooking scrambled eggs gently. The sunlight touched her face, and she moved quietly like she wanted to keep peace in the air. She did not see Michael at first. Her movements were calm and steady. She cracked eggs carefully, stirred them slowly, and wiped the counter with soft hands. Michael watched her from the doorway. She did not look like someone trying to impress anyone. She did not act like someone doing something strange. She looked like she belonged there, like she had always been part of the home. The boys came in suddenly, running with their small feet. They wore pajamas, their hair messy, their faces sleepy. When they saw Sarah, their whole faces lit up. Caleb hurried to her and held her leg. Noah tugged at her shirt gently. Ryan leaned close to the counter, watching her cook. Michael felt something break inside him. He had not seen them this relaxed in months. Sarah smiled down at them and said, "Breakfast is almost ready. Sit with me so we can eat together." The boys obeyed without arguing. They sat at the table, waiting. Michael walked in slowly, pretending he came for coffee, not because he wanted to see Sarah. She glanced up and saw him. Her smile disappeared for a moment, fear crossing her face, like she thought he still might be angry. "Good morning, sir," she said quietly. "Just Michael," he replied with a rough voice. "Call me Michael." She nodded with a small, shy smile, then went back to cooking. When she placed the plates on the table, the boys ate happily. They talked to her in small pieces, not full conversations, but enough to show they were comfortable with her. Noah asked if she liked dinosaurs. Ryan talked about a dream he had. Caleb only sat close to her, like sitting near her was enough to make him feel safe. Michael drank coffee and watched the scene from the far end of the table. Sarah listened to every word with care. She laughed gently at their jokes, even when they did not make much sense. She touched their hair softly when they got excited. She gave them attention in a way that felt natural. Michael felt something heavy move inside his chest. It was not pain. It was not fear. It was something close to hope, something he had not allowed himself to feel since Anna died. His sons loved Sarah, and Sarah loved them too. He could see it clearly. After breakfast, he found himself saying, "Sarah, after they finish eating, you can play with them a little, if you want." The boys stopped eating and stared at him. They looked shocked. Sarah also looked surprised. "If you want," Michael repeated softly. Sarah nodded and smiled at the boys. The moment felt warm in a simple way. The boys finished their food quickly, then held Sarah's hands and pulled her toward the playroom. Michael watched them go, then leaned against the counter, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. He had tried so hard to carry everything alone that he had forgotten the power of simple human closeness. Weeks passed, and Michael found himself changing. He started coming home earlier. He pretended it was because work was easing, but deep down, he knew the truth. He wanted to see Sarah with the boys. He wanted to hear their laughter again, even if he stood far away and watched through the window. One night, when sleep refused to come, he walked through the house. He opened doors slowly, allowing old memories to settle inside him. When he reached the library, he saw a soft light glowing. He stepped closer. Sarah was curled up on the couch, reading a book. Her shoes were off, and her feet were tucked under her legs. She looked peaceful in a way the house had not felt for months. She looked up when she heard him. She did not jump. She did not act surprised. She simply said, "You cannot sleep either." Michael shook his head and walked inside. They sat in silence for a long time. But it was a gentle silence, not the heavy one he lived with since Anna died. Sarah held her book quietly while he looked around the room. He wanted to say thank you, but the words felt too small. He finally asked, "What are you reading?" She showed him the cover, a book about life and loss. "Heavy reading," he whispered. "Heavy hearts understand heavy words," she answered softly. Her voice opened something inside him. He exhaled slowly, then said, "They laughed yesterday. My boys. They laughed again." Sarah nodded gently. "They talk about their mother," she said. "They remember her." Michael felt tears gathering in his eyes. He had forgotten some of those small memories, but Sarah brought them back. He whispered, "Thank you for keeping her alive through them." Sarah closed her book slowly, stood up, and said, "Good night, Michael," then walked out quietly, leaving him feeling lighter than he had felt in months. That night, for the first time, Michael believed there was a chance for healing. 3 more weeks passed, and the house slowly changed in a way Michael never expected. The quiet that once felt heavy began to soften. The boys smiled more, they played more. They even argued like normal children again. And every single change led back to Sarah. She touched every corner of the house with gentle hands, and somehow, the darkness that lived in the walls for months started to fade. But the deeper the boys attached themselves to Sarah, the more Michael feared something he could not explain. He feared losing her. He feared the boys would get hurt again. And he feared the world outside would misunderstand what was happening inside his home. One evening, Michael came home around 8. The boys were already asleep. The house was quiet, but not the painful kind of quiet. It was a peaceful one. He walked toward the kitchen when he heard something soft. It was crying, a quiet, broken kind of crying that made him stop walking. He stepped closer and saw Sarah sitting alone at the table, her back to him. She held something small in her hands, a silver locket, the same one he occasionally saw around her neck. She did not hear him at first. Her shoulders shook as she cried harder. Michael did not want to scare her, so he moved slowly. But she still sensed him. She turned quickly, wiping her tears with her sleeve. Her eyes were red, and her hands were shaking. "I am sorry," she said in a weak voice. "I did not mean for anyone to hear me. I will clean up and go to my room." Michael stepped inside the kitchen and asked softly, "Who is in the locket?" Sarah froze. She held the locket tighter, almost protectively. Her lips trembled before she whispered, "My daughter, Layla." Michael's chest tightened. He sat down across from her, waiting without pushing her to speak. Sarah opened the locket slowly, revealing a picture of a little girl with bright eyes and a big smile. "She died 2 years ago," Sarah said with a breaking voice. "My Layla. She had cancer. We fought for a year. Hospitals, treatments, long nights. She got weaker every day. She lost her hair. She stopped laughing. She stopped eating. I held her hand until the end." Tears rolled down her cheeks freely now. Michael felt pain rise in his throat. "My husband blamed me," she continued. "He said I should have noticed sooner, that I should have pushed harder. Our marriage could not survive it. He left. He took everything that reminded him of her. Her toys, her clothes, her pictures. This locket is all I have left." Sarah placed her hand over her chest and said, "After Layla died, I felt like my body was still breathing, but my soul was gone. I could not stay inside that house. I could not stay around people who told me to move on. I became a nanny because children's laughter was the only sound that made my heart feel alive again." Michael's eyes filled with tears. He reached across the table and touched her hand gently. "You are not alone," he whispered. "You understand their pain because you lived through your own. You saved my boys in a way I never could." Sarah shook her head slowly. "I did not save anyone, Michael. I only held them the way I wanted someone to hold me when Layla left." Michael squeezed her hand softly. "You saved us." The room fell quiet. Not heavy quiet, but a quiet that connected both of them. Two broken hearts sitting together, sharing something deeper than words. The next morning, things shifted again. Instead of staying far away, the boys clung to Sarah more. They asked for her in the morning. They waited for her at night. They even started calling her Mama Sarah in small, playful voices. Michael noticed the change, and it brought him a fear he did not expect. He feared the world would twist their love into something dirty. He feared people would misunderstand, and he was right to fear it. A week later, the whispers started. Someone took a photo of Sarah and the boys at the park. They were laughing, holding hands. Michael was pushing the stroller with snacks. The picture went online with a cruel caption that said, "Nanny" or something more. Then, someone sent a complaint to Oak Ridge Academy. They told the school board that Michael's household was surrounded by gossip. The school called him and said, "We think it is better for your sons to join next semester." Michael hung up the phone, shaking with anger. He drove home faster than he should have. When he reached the guest cottage, he saw Sarah packing her suitcase. Clothes were folded neatly. Her hands were trembling. "Sarah," he said, stepping inside the room. She looked at him with broken eyes. "I cannot stay, Michael. I have become the problem. Your sons are being rejected because of me. People are talking. They will suffer for it." Michael stepped closer. "They are not suffering because of you. They are suffering because of hateful people who do not understand love. I am the maid," she whispered, "and people will always see me that way. They will think things that are not true. They will say things that will hurt your boys." "You stopped being the maid the moment my sons laughed again," Michael said with a shaking voice. Sarah looked at him, confused and heartbroken. "Then, what am I?" she whispered. "What am I meant to be to them? And to you?" Michael opened his mouth, but tears held the words back. He stepped forward and said, "You are the person who saved my family. You are the person who brought life back into this home, and you are the person I cannot imagine losing." Sarah cried harder, covering her face with her hands. "I love those boys," she whispered, "but I am scared to stay." "Then stay scared with us," Michael said. "We will walk through that fear together." Sarah lowered her hands slowly. Michael knelt in front of her and held her trembling fingers. "I need you," he whispered. "Not as staff, not as someone who works for me. I need you in our lives. All of you." Sarah stared at him for a long time. Her tears slowed, her breathing softened, her fear remained, but something else entered her eyes, something warm, something trusting. She whispered, "Then I will stay, but I will stay as myself." Michael nodded slowly. "That is all I want." She closed her suitcase gently and placed it back in the closet. For the first time since Anna died, Michael felt like the house could stay whole. That night, he sat quietly in the garden as the boys slept. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you. To Anna. To God. To whatever force had brought Sarah into their lives." He did not know what the future would hold, but he knew one thing clearly. His family had been broken, but now they were slowly becoming whole again.